Hi, and welcome to the Leverage Digital podcast, where we delve into all things esports and tech in the educational space. I'm your host, Neil Lynch, and throughout these episodes, you'll hear from a number of professionals, teachers, and students who have taken the leap and embraced esports and tech in the classroom. Our first guest is Ms. Kerry Daud from St Margaret's Anglican School in Brisbane, Australia. She is Head of Faculty for eLearning, Research, Technology and Design, and is the frontrunner at her school for implementing esports into the curriculum. Please stick around, enjoy the episode, and let us know what you think in the comments below. So you're in the hustle and bustle of Southeast Queensland esports.
That is correct.
Have you been in the scene for very long? Is it something new?
It is something fairly new. So I was lucky enough to be offered a position at St Margaret's as a head of faculty for eLearning, Research, Technology and Design. And one of the things that I guess came with that role was initially 2 computers and 4 girls that like to basically game. And from that, what we did was basically grow esports from a small club into an actual official sport at the school. And it's really just taken off. We've gone from 4 girls. I think currently we've got 38.
Wow. Did that take some time for them to encourage their friends, or was it just picked up straight away?
Initially, it stayed quite small in the first year, but what we noticed was that as we were able to create a space for that club and other girls heard about it, the escalation in growth was really, really quick. So really it was about providing them with enough computers and a special space that was their own that really was the key.
Were you very surprised? Some students you didn't expect to be gamers, but all of a sudden they were in and amongst the crowd for this?
Absolutely. You see, my office is in the main library at the school. And we see lots of girls come and go, and especially girls that might sit by themselves a lot at lunch. And they were the girls that, having sort of watched other girls come in to go into the gaming room, were like, oh, what's going on? So we've got girls from grade 7 to 12, all sorts of girls from, girls that are traditionally music kids to kids that are academic to artists to, we really do cover all gamuts of the school community.
Yeah, it creates that bond. I remember when I was in year 8, I would not talk to year 12s because they're way too scary. But I find that when you have video games in common, it's almost like it just bridges that gap in the age difference and experience. And yeah.
Absolutely. And we definitely have seen that. We've got grade 12 girls that are in a team with a grade 7 girl through choice and through common interests. And it does come down to the games, especially that they, I guess, fall in love with the most.
Which is what sort of games do they play at the moment?
At the moment, the 2 favourites are Valorant and League of Legends. We do have another group of girls that love your Super Smash. So they like Mario Kart for fun, but not at a competition level. But we've got a little group that do like the Super Smash at a competition level. But for the most part, they like their PC gaming and definitely the games that have characters. So they really seem to connect to the different characters that they're playing and somehow find a link to how it represents them as a person.
So you've been in education for about 20 years now.
Yeah.
When did you first notice video gaming having an impact on students, whether that be positive or negative?
For me, I think I have found it to be mostly positive. Certainly in my early years of teaching, I'm a history teacher by trade. And I remember the first time Skyrim came out.
Yeah, 2011.
All of a sudden, a large number of my students were not in school the next day.
Yeah.
And the conversation, obviously, when they came back to school was, we just got Skyrim and we couldn't stop playing it. And then they would go through, Miss, which bits are historically accurate? So some of the games actually re-engaged kids in their academic work, strangely enough, but it also gave me an opportunity to learn about gaming and how that might be a way to sort of connect with some of these kids. And of course, then Assassin's Creed went through a number of historical iterations. So historically, PC gaming has been really good for education, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it also goes to show, we talk about esports and there's a lot of different pathways into the scene, video gaming in general. You would have had historians on the development team for those games because they would have had to help with the writing and the accuracy and the fact checking as well. So, I think it just goes to show how many different, no matter your interests, there's always a game out there for you or some sort of idea that you can put forward.
I
whatever
100%
your strengths
agree.
Yeah.
And I think too, I know with the Assassin's Creed Egypt one, I think it might have been one of the big English universities or had actually worked on a lot of the graphic design and the storylines behind that. So you're right, there's such an industry behind it. And I think to write gaming off as somehow dangerous or promoting violence is actually really short-sighted, because even those kids that play Call of Duty, whilst that's not a game that I would have at school for esports, for some of those kids, that actually really does gauge them in the history of World War One or World War Two or Vietnam. And I think it's just a little bit too simplistic to say, oh, it's just about violence, because they do actually become engaged in the wider story that their games exist in.
And young people, I mean, they have minds like a sponge, right? Like an adult might look at Call of Duty and just see guns and violence, but the young kids, they heard a little snippet or they read something in the game and they think, oh, I want to learn more about that. So I definitely can relate to that, as well as having some other students on some of our esports programs. They pick things up that I would never even consider to look at, and it can inspire them in many different ways as well.
I agree, and I don't think, some of those games are any different than someone from an older generation watching, a war movie. It's just that the engagement and the interaction is different.
And do you find that perhaps adds to kids' social awareness or physical awareness at school? Because, multitasking in games is just common knowledge now. And I mean, personally, I feel like I'm a better driver, because when I play games, I have to constantly focus on multiple facets. So as I'm driving, I'm looking left, right, center at the same time. Do you find like in school it maybe helps with that?
I think it absolutely does. One of the things that blew my mind when my girls started to compete in different esports competitions was the sheer level of logistics and problem solving that actually had to occur during a game, and the level of communication was mind-blowing. So in terms of the ability to communicate, work in a team, problem solve, the spatial awareness, I think is incredibly complicated. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why, for example, younger people are much better at flying drones than, say, someone of my age, because that learning to actually control and move and understand space in the digital field is something it's really quite unique to this generation. And I do think it's going to open up so many wonderful opportunities, whether it's, robotics and medicine, or whether it's, cybersecurity and pattern recognition and all of those other incredibly high order cognitive skills. I think that gaming is going to actually, or has already, given them a sort of a foundation in the way that they can think and communicate that other generations that are older than them may not have had.
And I feel obviously the way that society or the way that tech is going, we're moving into this metaverse, you'd like to say, you're looking at everything that is going on, digital ID and educational moving online the last couple of years. Do you have any programs in your school that not only focus on esports, but do you guys talk about balancing esports with other activities such as schooling and sports and sleep and stuff like that?
We absolutely do. So we actually contacted a company called GameAware, and they work with Team Bliss, which is the esports academy that we got in. And I got them to come in and do 12 rounds of professional coaching. And a lot of that is about well-being, cognitive load. For example, when you're training, it's different to gaming. When you're gaming, you should only be gaming for a certain amount of time. It's about eating healthy. It's about movement, and how it actually, as a sport, has to be balanced like any other physical sport. You can't play a game of AFL, for example, 24 hours a day, because your body would be emotionally and physically exhausted. And gaming's the same way. So we absolutely did go into things like sports psychology and the healthy way to game, even if you're just gaming for fun, which is different to gaming for sport.
I feel like there's that danger in video games that you can play for 6 hours straight or 8 hours straight, as opposed to AFL for that long. But again, it just comes down to mental fortitude and attitude and discipline as well when it comes to gaming, like really setting yourself a time limit and, learning how sleep can actually make you a better gamer. There's all these like different tricks that I found you can correlate to 14-year-olds. It's like, hey, you want to go to sleep, you'll be a better gamer. If you eat healthy, then you're going to be a better athlete. And then when you play sport, you get more oxygen to the brain. It makes you more cognitively aware and you're a better gamer for it. It sounds like you guys are really honing in on that point of well-being too. So
absolutely, because it is about being physically and mentally fit. And again, it's about that cognitive load. You can play games for 6 hours, but are you your best 6 hours in? So
yeah, for sure.
It's those sort of points of reflection.
And do you play with other schools in your area very much? How many schools do you connect with around Southeast Queensland?
Yep, so we played in a couple of competitions. We did the Fuse Cup last year, but our girls are really more into that PC-based gaming rather than the console-based. So we've done the Australian Esports League and we've done Meta, the high school league, and both of those have been really good this year. The reason why they like the Australian Esports League was they love the original Overwatch. They don't like apparently the second edition, but they do love the original Overwatch. So it gave those girls an opportunity to do that. And obviously the small group that like the Super Smash Brothers competition sits nicely in that. And there's schools all over Australia. And that sort of goes across Saturdays. And then the Meta competition is also schools all around Australia. And they're in the evenings. And for us, that really comes down to the League of Legends teams and the Valorant teams that the girls like to play. So we don't get to meet many in our local area, which was one of the reasons why we set up an invitational, because even though we were playing schools all around Australia, we found that majority of those teams, or all of the teams, were male dominated. There might be one or two teams that had a girl in them, but we didn't come across, and it's not saying that there's not, but we didn't come across any other all-girl teams.
That's the thing, right, is that almost 50% of gamers are female. So where are they when it comes to esports? Because it goes to show, as the Margarets, you have a very robust team of girls that are interested to compete and play for fun or for competition and a challenge. So are there other schools? You had that invitational. Tell me a little bit about that invitational.
Yep, so we decided that we would put together a Girls in Gaming Invitational, and we did that in conjunction with Team Bliss, because they have this wonderful academy, which is a great physical space to bring people together and game aware. And the reason why we did it was because we were playing lots of teams, and like you said, we weren't coming across other girls. And at the same time, the girls did have to deal with some of those things that does give esports or gaming a little bit of a bad reputation, in terms of they were getting comments along the lines of, oh, this is why girls shouldn't game, or can I send you a DM and ask you out on a date, and all of those sort of things. And the girls managed it really well, and one of the reasons why is because we actually game in a dedicated space at school. Doesn't matter whether it's a night game or a Saturday game, we are all at school. The Discord is up on an external screen, and we're able to walk and talk the girls through, obviously, how to deal with those conversations and the challenges that come with it. But it was one of the things that all the girls kept saying is, when are we going to come across other girls? And we'd really want to play other girls so that we can play competitive, but also not have to deal with those sort of comments that come through, and feel like they can develop in their own space. So I started talking to other teachers I knew from other schools in e-learning or that were involved in esports, and those that came from co-ed schools said that the girls just don't turn up. And on talking to students and to those teachers, it's because they didn't feel comfortable in that what they felt was a very masculine space. And I think the defining difference was that even though we were a girls' school, but having a space that was just dedicated to them made a really big deal. And on speaking to some of the other co-ed schools, I said, have you offered a girls-only training time? A time where they can come in and game without feeling self-conscious in front of the other boys, where they can develop their skills. And that was one of the things that really inspired us at St. Margaret's to send out an invite to other girls' schools to be involved in a Girls in Gaming Invitational. And we didn't have a computer to spare on the day. It was full, and a lot of the comments from some of the girls, and some of them, it was their first time ever gaming, was being able to actually come in and not have to worry about whether they were going to be good enough, or whether, the boys were going to make a comment about why they should or shouldn't be there, and being able to connect with other girls, and the collegiality and the excitement across all of the girls in all of the teams was sensational. And one of the principals from one of the other schools that were involved came, and she mentioned one of the students there, and she said, oh, I've watched that girl at school for years, and this is the first time I've really seen her smile.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments I've heard like that, where it just brings out this different persona or a more confident version of the student. And a couple of points to mention on that. So the Girls in Gaming comp, was that just local? Do you guys just have that locally?
That was just locally because it was our first time. What we're hoping to do is hoping that other schools will hear about it, will maybe offer their girls, if they're in a co-ed school, a girls-only training time. And then hopefully we'll be able to set up a network of schools where they've got girls-only or inclusive teams that want to play in a girls-only environment. And then we'll be able to set up our own sort of friendly competition where girls get that opportunity to actually compete against other schools in that sort of safe environment, come together, whether it's somewhere like Team Bliss or even online, and have sort of some competition, semi-final, grand final rounds, but without the expense of other competitions, and obviously with the collegiality of being able to provide that opportunity, so that when the girls do go into those other competitions like Humeta and like the AEL, they've got a little bit more confidence and, I guess, training behind them.
Yeah, so I mean, it's all well and great that you guys work with the girls on how to respond to these negative comments that they get, because that's what they experience at their game at home, shut away in their room. That's what I like to say to parents and teachers, is that these kids are playing games regardless. So it's really nice to have an environment where they can have the direction, the feedback of the adults to deal with particular cyberbullying or comments or inappropriate comments as well. So do you feel like esports in schools is a really good way for teachers to even talk to the perpetrators per se? Like, the boys that are making these comments, maybe. I think that's the problem, is that there's this culture in gaming that is kind of flourished in its own basement without the onlooks of parents and teachers in an educational environment. And now we're kind of suffering the cultural difficulties behind that. So it's about bringing that into the classroom to educate these young folks.
100%. And I think teachers that actually do look after esports do have to be really accountable to that. Because as I said, we've been in these competitions where teachers are supposed to be in some way supervising their teams, whether it's just remotely via Discord, yet the comments have still occurred. So I do think there is a real responsibility for teachers that are going to sort of champion esports to be very responsible for the behaviour and sportsmanship of their teams, and making sure that they're calling it out. Because, for example, I wouldn't say something to a member of another school's team, but of course I would put in a comment through the Discord to the teaching or the administration coach. But I think that those conversations should be picked up initially by the teacher of that team in and of itself.
Yeah, so it's not just about running a team. It's about all of the other facets that come into it, well-being and behaviour and stuff online as well.
Absolutely. And I think that as I said, advocates of esports really need to make sure that that is a strong part of their culture within their team, what they will accept, what types of behaviours they promote. And we did have one incident, and our girls had to report it to Meta, and Meta handled it really well. What I would have liked to have seen is the actual teacher who was overseeing that team at the time handle it on the spot in that moment too, because they're the sort of things that make a difference.
Well, as a personal antidote, I helped run a League of Legends competition 2019 and 2020. We ran it through University of Queensland, and then Meta took over in 2021. And basically there was an incident where we had not many incidents throughout the year. Like, overall, the kids are pretty good at policing each other and behaving well online. They are representing their school. So it's not like we get this all the time. But there was a couple of incidences, and one of the students got picked up for cyberbullying. He made a comment, and his teacher took him aside for one, gave him a bit of a talk, and he had to apologize. But then he also had to write like a 500-word essay on cyberbullying and how it can impact another person. And I found that after I even read the student's essay, I was pretty impressed with it. He was year 9. After that, for the rest of the competition, he just became quite pleasant, and he even helped, keep the team positive and always stay positive online. Because I think for young kids, they don't always click that there's somebody on the other end of that screen. So when they say mean comments, they don't see the reaction in front of them, as opposed to if they're in the classroom and they say that. So yeah, I think it's a really good way to educate boys and girls alike on how what they say and do online can affect others.
I agree. And it's not just about cyberbullying too. It's just about things like gender perception. And it's about difference, because, as you know, like any community, the gaming community is incredibly diverse. It's global. It transcends gender boundaries. It transcends people's
language
perceptions
barriers
of who they perceive themselves to be. So it's got this incredibly rich foundation of being able to be the most inclusive and diverse of all sports. But we've obviously got to educate young people as they're coming through on how to actually manage that. How do we communicate in that environment? How are we accepting in the way that we welcome the difference? Because it's the difference and diversity of the people that do gaming that actually make it such an incredible space. We've got, in our esports team, we've got a big boarding school at my school, and so we've got international students, I've got rural students, I've got First Nations, we've got all sorts of students. And when I talk to them about who they game with, they've got this incredible global network of people that they communicate and connect with and really see as friends. And I know that scares a lot of parents, but these kids actually have real conversations and really in-depth connections where they're learning about different cultures and ways of life, and that's such a rich experience. So I do think it's really valuable. I think that the more conversations we have through esports, the more ways we help young people learn to navigate those conversations, to adopt to how to be inclusive, and how do you have conversations with people from different languages and different backgrounds and with different interests. I think that's only got to be a great thing.
When you were implementing or introducing esports into St. Margaret's, did you have much pushback from parents and teachers, and how did you go about navigating that barrier?
Yeah, initially not everyone sees it as a sport. So there was a little bit about educating the people around the fact that this is actually a legitimate sport now, and that there are more people that play and watch this sport than many of the mainstream sports that some of our parents or community members might consider more legitimate. So there was certainly conversations about that. It's certainly about conversations around the importance of digital literacy. That I think the statistics came out today, like in terms of employment divide, people with IT backgrounds are going to earn those wages above $150,000 a year. But esports is part of that industry. It's talking about esports in terms of future growth, in terms of things like creative design and graphic design and the creative industries. It's just, it's a growing field. So having those conversations with parents was really, really good. The other thing was obviously ensuring our parents that our students would always play supervised. And that's a commitment that we've made by providing the room and the space to do that. Our principal, Ros Curtis, is incredibly progressive, and she's been an amazing supporter of it becoming a sport and the girls getting the equipment and the coaching that they require. That makes a really big difference when you have an incredible female lead in that respect. And eventually other teachers have come to see the value in what esports is doing, because they will come up and say, oh, I spoke to this student and they were so engaged and so excited about the competition on the weekend. They've never spoken to me so engaged before. So really you've got to basically jump on in. And I think a lot of teachers and parents become really surprised by the emotional growth in their students. We've had a parent in tears because it's the first time their daughter's ever been able to represent their school in an official sport. So it is really, yes, there are things that we have to manage, like you do with any sport. You absolutely have to manage the culture of the team. You absolutely have to manage the supervision of the team and how we go about training and supporting those students as they come through. But it's worth the effort because the benefits are worth the effort.
Yeah, for sure. And school's all about giving young people opportunity. And some people are more suited to some forms of training than others. And I always found that the PE teachers were like the hardest to convince. But like you said, to a certain point, you can only convince them. You actually have to show them. Like, you can't just tell them how good it is. You have to be like, hey, look at, little Jimmy here. He was like this before the esports program in the school, and now he's progressed to this. And I think it's almost like a similar story across many other schools that I've worked with. Once you just give them that opportunity, the kids flourish and they're able to find what interests them and connect with other students and also teachers as well. Makes you like the cool hip teacher now, hey?
Oh, no, not quite. The cool hip teacher is definitely not my modus operandi. But what it is that we've provided a space for kids that really need it and want it. And they felt so happy about it. Even when we went to our Girls in Gaming Invitational, and one of the girls turned around and said, I can't believe this was done for us.
Yeah.
So that's it's not about being cool or hip, because I cannot even drive a Mario Kart around the lap once without falling off. But it is about actually providing something for students that is going to give them an opportunity as they leave school to develop a passion, create networks, possibly to go into a field that really puts them at the forefront of technology and opportunity. So I think that is the most important thing. I don't think anyone's going to think a middle-aged mum is cool or hip, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But at the same time, I do think the fact that they're talking about this being a Commonwealth sport and an Olympic sport, when people are starting to see the millions and billions of dollars that people can actually make in this industry, that's been a reality check for all the naysayers. And I think it's been a reality check for a lot of people that thought this was just about males as well. well.
Yeah.
Because these girls are good. They just need an opportunity to be able to develop those skills safely and supported so that they can actually then go into the mainstream of esports and actually show other people what they've got, because there's nothing about their gender or their identity that's going to prevent them from being as good as the next person in this sport. This is the most equal playing field.
Yeah,
when you think about it.
Barriers, for sure.
That's
it's just
correct.
about growing confidence. Because I also find like a lot of girls, when they do join a mixed team, they just take the support role, and all the boys take on like these front runners and the attack role and stuff like that. So I think there could be something in that. Sometimes girls like to nurture their team. They want to play that support role, but there are some girls that just love that, frontline running attack. And I think that they should also get that opportunity to represent their team.
I do think there's something a little bit more to it, and that we need to acknowledge that there is going to be gender bias.
Yeah.
And people fall into the roles that they think generally suit genders, but also the fact that for the most part, games are designed by males predominantly at the moment, which means that those traditional roles and traditional understandings of genders go into the design of those games. So it's not just about esports and empowering girls to actually not feel like they have to take support, that they are leaders in their field, they do have those skills, but it's also about empowering girls to go, well, that's actually a field of employment that I can go into, and I can redesign these games, and I can challenge those perceptions in the way the games are designed from the very beginning. So I think that it's a much bigger conversation than just about whether girls feel like they're more nurturing. I think it's about challenging the whole perception of gender, because this is a field where all of those boundaries can actually slowly be designed out.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. It's so great to hear such a passionate teacher that works specifically with young women in this space, because, like you said, most schools that I work with are all male-based. So I love to see that. Any other schools that are interested in getting involved with girls in gaming, or coming to the Invitational, or just learning how to bring esports to their school, can they contact you personally?
I would love that. We're not trying to set up some big alternative competition, but we are trying to set up a network of schools where our girls can have the opportunity to play with other girls or inclusive teams when it comes to gender. And the more schools that we can bring together in a network, the greater the opportunities that we provide our students. So if they can contact me via LinkedIn, they can contact me directly at St. Margaret's Anglican Girls' School in Ascot, or they can email me at my email address that I think you said is on the
I'll make sure I link the email address for anybody to look into as well. Yeah, LinkedIn, Kerry Daud, Daud. And I'd just love to thank you so much for coming on today. You've had such a great insight. It looks like for the future, you've got esports set into the curriculum now. It's not going anywhere.
Oh, it's certainly a massive thing at our school, and our girls are thriving. So it's certainly something we just want to grow and not sort of rest on our laurels, so to speak.
I appreciate you so much for coming, and for everyone that's listening, please feel free to reach out to Kerry or Leverage Digital as well. We're all about connecting and bringing esports to the forefront, educating parents, teachers and students alike, which Kerry and St. Margaret's are well on their way to doing. So tune in next time for another episode, and we'll speak to you soon.